They are small but mighty creatures, and let's face it, beavers are often given a bad rap as destructive, chopping down trees to build their homes.
The land was cracked, rivers gone, and life was disappearing fast. At first, even the scientists expected failure until the first pools began to glimmer under the desert sun. What happened next stunned everyone, and you'll soon see this story is about far bigger than beavers. The wild plan that brought a river back to life. Dropping thousands of water-loving beavers into one of the driest corners of America sounded like a joke. The kind of thing you'd hear in a late-night bar story, not a serious ecological plan. But for a small team of ecologists, it was the last move on the board. The land they were looking at was dying. Once healthy rivers had turned into cracked scars. Seasonal rains disappeared in days, draining through soil like water through a sieve. Entire ecosystems were collapsing under heat and thirst. Traditional fixes, dams, retention basins, irrigation networks cost millions and took years to build. And even then, the results were temporary. That's when someone brought up a species with an ancient reputation, the beaver. Not as a mascot, but as a builder. Early fur traders swore that beaver ponds could turn bare meadows into green wetlands in a single season. Native tribes once called them sacred builders for their ability to summon water where there was none. The plan sounded wild. Relocate overpopulated beavers from northern watersheds to hand-picked sites in the American Southwest. From 2022 into early 2023, small pioneer packs were released into dry corridors under the watch of biologists. They were tagged, tracked, and studied, not just to see if they would survive, but to see if they could work their magic in a place where water was a stranger. The first weeks didn't turn heads. Beavers gnawed at young cottonwoods, disappeared into burrows, and built modest dams along shallow channels. Then something shifted. Little pools formed behind the dams. Even after the last winter storms faded, those pools stayed. The water lingered, soaking into banks, feeding shrubs and softening soil that had been baked hard for decades. By midsummer, locals who had grown used to seeing nothing but dry rock in those channels were spotting ponds, actual ponds that held clear water under the desert sun. Skeptics scoffed at first. One hydrologist dismissed the idea outright. "We don't even have flowing rivers half the year. How in the world do you expect beavers to build dams here?" But each week, the evidence grew. Small clusters of dams began chaining together. Water that once raced out of the desert in hours now slowed, spread, and stayed. For the scientists, it was more than a surprise. It was a question that burned brighter with every dam that appeared. If this could happen in one of the harshest landscapes in America, what would happen if the beavers kept going? And that's exactly what they were about to find out. Because by the time the first generation of transplanted beavers began raising kits of their own, the experiment had already outgrown its pilot phase. The trickle of change was turning into a current, and soon it wouldn't just be scientists paying attention. The expansion and early success. The headlines called it a mass beaver intervention, but on the ground it felt more like a quiet revolution. Those first few families had settled in, built their lodges, and raised their young, and now the next generation was fanning out. By mid-2023, the dozen or so pioneers had multiplied into hundreds, spreading through dry gullies and forgotten stream beds. What started as cautious monitoring soon became a race to keep up. Each new colony meant more dams, more ponds, and more unexpected pockets of life. These weren't temporary puddles. They held long after the last rainfall, defying the desert's reputation for swallowing water whole. Researchers who had once doubted the idea began to see the scale of it. By the end of summer, aerial surveys showed chains of ponds stitched across the landscape like blue beads on brown fabric. The beaver dams worked like a natural filtration system, trapping sediment and letting water seep deep into the ground. Soil that had been lifeless for years was suddenly damp and dark. Cottonwood sprouted from the banks without a single irrigation pipe. Grasses returned, followed by the first tentative signs of wildlife. Dr. Eliza Moreno, one of the hydrologists who had been openly skeptical, admitted, "Within 3 weeks of the first pond forming, I saw changes that normally take close to 9 months in traditional restoration." She wasn't exaggerating. Farmers began noticing changes, too. One rancher in the valley reported that his well, which had been dropping steadily for years, had risen a full foot since a beaver pond formed upstream. Remote soil sensors backed him up, showing a 20 to 30% jump in moisture levels across the test sites. It wasn't just about the water you could see. Microclimate stations were logging cooler temperatures around the ponds, enough to help young desert plants survive their most vulnerable weeks. The ripple effects were stacking fast. And that's when the real surprise arrived. As the ponds grew, so did their role as magnets for life. Biologists tracking local biodiversity started reporting species they hadn't seen in the area for decades. First came the birds. Waterfowl swooping down to rest in the still ponds. Herons stalking the edges and ducks paddling in places that months earlier were nothing but cracked earth. These weren't random visits. Migration specialists realized that the beaver ponds were reviving stopover points on ancient bird routes that had been abandoned for years. It was as if the wildlife had been waiting for someone or something to set the table again. And the birds were only the beginning, because what happened next would prove the beavers weren't just bringing back water. They were bringing back the desert's heartbeat. The return of wildlife and lost sounds. The water was one thing, but the sound was something else entirely. Before the beavers came, the desert had a silence you could almost feel pressing on your ears. Now mornings began with the chatter of birds, the rustle of reeds, and the faint splash of something moving just beneath the surface. And it wasn't just birds. Tracks in the mud told stories the cameras sometimes missed. Desert foxes, kangaroo rats, and even bobcats came to drink at dawn. One set of images captured a family of coyotes, muzzles dripping, framed against a desert sunset, an unspoken truce at the water's edge. Then came the real shock: frogs. For years, local herpetologists believed several amphibian species had disappeared from the area entirely. Yet now, their deep, resonant calls echoed at night. Breeding pairs clung to shaded shallows. Tadpoles darted through reeds. Frogs are notoriously picky. They need clean, stable water to lay eggs. Their return was a signal flare that the beaver ponds weren't just surviving. They were thriving. Ecologists who had been tracking soil chemistry confirmed what the animals already knew. The water was balanced, cool, and rich with aquatic insects. The beavers' engineering had created perfect microecosystems without a single blueprint. Balancing pH and building safe shallows just by following instinct. For some locals, the change felt almost mythical. Older residents began telling stories they'd heard from grandparents, legends of waterbringers, animals that could green the land and call the rains. Back then, they were folk tales. Now, they were watching it happen in real life. One longtime ranger put it simply: "I used to come out here and hear nothing but wind. Now, some mornings, it sounds like a marshland." The ponds were no longer just experiments. They were living oases pulling life out of the dust. And they were about to have an even deeper impact, one that couldn't be seen on the surface. Beyond the pilot, global possibilities and challenges. The question was no longer whether beavers could change a desert. It was where else they could do it. By late 2024, restoration specialists from across Arizona, Utah, and New Mexico were trading notes with land managers as far away as northern Mexico and even parts of the Middle East. The idea was bold but simple. Use beavers as low-cost, self-sustaining agents of climate resilience. Let them do what they've done for millions of years, only this time in the places humans thought were too far gone. But every expert who joined the conversation said the same thing. It wouldn't work everywhere. Beavers need woody vegetation for food and building material, seasonal water to get started, and enough space to build without triggering conflicts with human infrastructure. That meant choosing locations with precision, not just enthusiasm. And then came the political side, the tangle of water rights in the West. Any shift in where water flows can shift power. And beaver ponds don't ask permission before holding it back. Farmers, ranchers, tribal nations, state agencies, and conservationists all had to sit at the same table normally. Those meetings were tense, full of sharp words over who gets what. But here, the visible success made cooperation possible. One rancher who had openly opposed the project stood in front of a county meeting and admitted his grazing lands were greener than they had been in years. School children planted cottonwood saplings on field trips to meet the beavers, learning how the animals shaped the land. Normally, those meetings were tense, full of sharp words over who gets what. But here, the visible success made cooperation possible. One rancher who had openly opposed the project stood in front of a county meeting and admitted his grazing lands were greener than they had been in years. School children planted cottonwood saplings on field trips to meet the beavers, learning how the animals shaped the land. Historians began pointing out the poetic reversal. In the 19th century, fur trappers followed beaver-rich waterways as lifelines across the West. Back then, humans hunted the beaver nearly to extinction. Now, humans were bringing the beaver back. And the beaver was showing them how to survive a hotter, drier future. Dam by dam, lodge by lodge, ripple by ripple, they had taken a dying landscape and rewritten its future in just 2 years. Predators return. How apex species are following the beavers back. When the beaver ponds brought back the water, they brought back the plants. The plants brought back the insects which brought back the amphibians. Amphibians drew the birds. Birds brought in small predators. And now something bigger was happening. The return of apex predators. Trail cameras set up to monitor beaver populations began catching unexpected visitors. Not just coyotes or bobcats, but mountain lions prowling along the pond edges at night. In one startling sequence, a camera captured a sleek cougar crouching low in the reeds, its eyes reflecting the infrared light, watching a pair of moose deer drink under the moon. This wasn't a one-off sighting. Over the next year, biologists recorded a measurable increase in predator presence across multiple sites. Golden eagles were spotted circling over wetlands, diving at waterfowl. Red-tailed hawks perched on dead cottonwood limbs, scanning the pond edges for movement. Even badgers, rarely seen in the area, began to reappear. Why does this matter? Because apex predators are ecosystem regulators. Their presence balances prey populations, preventing overgrazing and maintaining healthy vegetation growth around the ponds. Without them, a sudden spike in smaller herbivores could undo much of the beaver's work. It was a textbook case of trophic cascade. The same kind of chain reaction seen when wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone. In that case, elk populations fell back into balance. Willow stands regenerated and riverbanks stabilized. Here, the process was different in species, but identical in principle. The beavers laid the groundwork and the predators brought balance. Local ranchers, usually wary of predator resurgence, found themselves in an odd position. Yes, a few livestock losses were reported, but the improved grazing quality near wetlands offset the risk. Some ranchers even installed game cameras of their own. Fascinated by the unexpected return of wildlife they thought was gone for good. For ecologists, the predator comeback was proof that the beaver project was more than a water fix. It was a system reset. These apex species weren't just visitors. They were moving back in, staking territory and shifting the ecological conversation from survival to sustainability, and that led to another realization. If predators could re-establish themselves here in a once barren desert, then perhaps the beaver blueprint wasn't just about water at all. Maybe it was about reawakening the entire natural hierarchy that deserts had lost. Hybrid restoration projects. Up to this point, the beavers had been working entirely on their own terms. But as the project expanded, scientists started asking, what if we could guide that energy without interfering with its natural flow? The answer came in the form of hybrid restoration sites, areas where beaver activity was paired with low-tech human interventions to speed up recovery and prevent problem flooding. One of the first experiments took place in a narrow canyon where beavers had built a series of small dams, but seasonal floods kept wiping them out. Engineers stepped in, anchoring starter structures made of logs and willow branches in the stream bed. The beavers quickly claimed them, reinforcing the frames with mud and plant material. The result, dams that could withstand heavy rains without breaking, a blend of beaver instinct and human planning. Elsewhere, scientists used drone surveys to identify prime dam building locations, then pre-planted fast-growing willow stands. When beavers arrived, they didn't waste energy searching for materials. They went straight to construction. This shaved months off the normal dam building timeline. Hydrologists also began using small flow control devices nicknamed beaver deceivers. These were simple pipes hidden inside certain dams to regulate water height. The beavers kept building unaware that the devices were preventing excessive flooding of nearby roads or farmland. This allowed humans and beavers to coexist without constant relocation battles. But perhaps the most innovative hybrid approach was the Ghost Pond project. Using old topographical maps, researchers identified depressions where ponds had existed decades or even centuries ago. They pre-shaped these sites with minimal earth moving, creating shallow basins ready for colonization. Once beavers arrived, they finished the work, sealing the ponds with mud and filling them with diverted water. Within weeks, ghost ponds sprang back to life, hosting dragonflies, minnows. Then there's the sea otter story from the Pacific Northwest. Sea otters feed heavily on sea urchins. And when fur traders nearly wiped the otter out in the 1800s, sea urchin populations exploded, mowing down kelp forests. Those kelp forests were critical. They sheltered fish, stored carbon, and protected coastlines from erosion. When otter were reintroduced in the 20th century, they cut urchin numbers back, and the kelp forests bounced back with a speed that stunned marine scientists. Entire underwater ecosystems returned and fishing communities benefited from the healthier, more diverse fish populations that followed. In South America, giant river turtles have been quietly reshaping floodplain forests along the Amazon. Their nesting behavior disturbs and turns over riverbank soils, creating seeds for certain flood-tolerant trees. When turtle numbers crashed due to poaching, the diversity of riverbank vegetation dropped sharply. Now, community-led conservation programs that protect turtle nests are seeing not just turtle numbers rise, but also the reappearance of plant species missing for decades. The pattern is clear. Keystone species like beavers, elephants, otter, and turtles don't just exist in their environments. They shape them. Their absence can start a slow collapse. Their return can set off a chain reaction that even decades of human-led restoration struggle to match. Could this be the blueprint for saving other landscapes around the world? And what happens if we ignore it? Subscribe for more incredible stories like this. And tell us in the comments, where do you think the next beaver miracle should